Hey everyone, welcome to episode 136 of the Chatteris podcast. In this episode, we have the one and only Mark Petrou. So this is a read the news episode, and if you're not sure of what we're doing with this format and you didn't hear the last one with Charlie Collins, think of it as Sky News or BBC presenters where the guests come in the morning or the night before and they discuss the morning papers. What we use as content is news articles from the Chatteris blog. We would discuss articles that shape the industry, essentially, even if it's not so obvious. But we like to go in and out of things and, make sense of certain things. And it can either be serious or funny or whichever, and we just try and have a bit of fun with it. And we haven't disbanded the original interview format, but we wanted to add something else to the mix. Otherwise, life is boring, right? If you want to know more about Mark Petrou, then you can go back and listen to episode 1. He has been on numerous other episodes with other guests also. From a content point of view, we've been pretty busy. We've published over 200 articles, but we're really excited to get the podcast going again too. The media stuff that we do is all on the side. Our business is keeping you guys stocked with product. At the moment, we're shipping thousands of parcels a month, and that usually includes deep fry cleaner, Louisiana seasoning, super absorbent cloths, fish cake mix, batters, coatings, whatever it is that you need. We're here to keep you guys going. So if you're here listening to me, jump over to chatteris.shop and have a look how we can support your business. If there's someone you think we should be talking to on the Chatteris podcast, someone doing something really interesting, if that's a big yes, let us know at Stelios at worldofchatteris.com. If you want to keep in the loop of what we're doing at Chatteris, then you should be following us on social media. But to get that information delivered to you, to your inbox even, join our mailing list. The link will be in the episode show notes, and that's the only place where you'll get up-to-date news, offers, and so on. Mark, welcome to the Chatteris podcast, mate. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me.
How could I not have you? This is a moment that we can all share our opinions and talk about the news.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I tend not to these days, unless somebody really asks my opinion. I tend to keep it to myself.
Well, I know we message a lot, so privately your opinions are known to me. Anyway, this isn't going to change the world, is it? So it's just 3 to 4 news articles off the Chatteris website, and it shouldn't be too hard, should it? It's not going to land you in hot water, is it?
No, it's just I find 2023 to be quite a challenging place to live these days. Because I'm not in a minority. I mean, I'm a privileged middle-aged white male. So how could I possibly know how challenging the world is for people?
Luckily, we're contained to what pertains to the industry. So you do have knowledge, and let's tap into that thing. So the first article you chose off the Chatteris website, and all the links will be in the show notes so people can find them. Title is Navigating the Fine Line Between Workplace Banter and Bullying. You chose this topic. The overview or article summary is the fact that there is a fine line between banter and bullying. It addresses the subtle line between casual jokes and workplace bullying, particularly in the hospitality sector, although I don't think that's the only place it exists, but that's what the article was about. And it says that the evidence shows that 39% of workers in this sector experience bullying disguised as banter, etc., etc. Mark, what do you think to this, mate?
Well, I really like this article, and you are good at picking topics for your audience that do challenge the spectator, and I really enjoyed this article. obviously I've been at the same site with my own business for 37 years, but I've been into lots and lots of kitchen environments as a consultant and with other businesses that I've worked on or in. And I think what this article did for me was made me realise the passing of time. Historically, the kitchen environment, and you'll know this because you go back as well. The kitchen environment is a bit of a pressure cooker. There's lots of demands on timings, on quality, on performance, and um, the kitchen environment was one where uh, it was a very passionate environment, and people would often use banter amongst the workforce as a way of kind of getting that stress out, especially at the end of a service session. And in years gone by, I've had some great laughs in a kitchen, normally at someone's expense, and sometimes it's your turn and you're the butt of everyone's jokes. Um, and so this article for me really made me realise um, that we've moved on from that.
Mm.
Even as an industry, we need to be present. We need to be more professional, more aware, because um, being old school is not a valid excuse. You can't say, "Oh, I come from a time when when banter was acceptable," and and it's a bit like comedians, old school comedians. They hide behind the fact that you know the joke was of its time and rubbish. This is 2023. You need to be present, and this article was good for that, and it made me realise. In many ways that the type of businesses you need to run today, you need to run, have to be they have to be compliant. They have to be sterile. There's no room um, in a workplace now for banter. There's no room for, and it's a shame, because you have to build a team. You have to build a team of people that can work together, that can trust each other, that know each other almost intimately. You have a work wife or a work husband because you work so closely with them. But there's no room for it
I
in 2023.
I have a problem with this. I can tell you why. Because you've known me for a long time, and you knew me before I had Sarah's, and when I had, when I worked for my dad in his fish and chip shop.
Yes,
And I'm not gonna lie, mate. There's something when I was writing that article, I was thinking of some of the things that I did, like working with people
yeah,
and what they did to me. Yeah,
but
no,
you
and you
can't
can't do it no more. And like,
can't
and
do
you
it
know, and
now.
I text a friend of mine saying, like, even when I wrote the article, saying, like, wow, like I'd be in prison now, like with some of this stuff, like, you know,
For
and
sure.
it was banter, in my opinion. And some of it went over the top, and they did it back though. It was always back. And then I thought, what is the difference between bullying, banter, but also hazing? Boys, I've got two boys, and they are constantly hazing each other. I mean, it's never ending. And then I read that hazing is a ritual designed to bring teams together. Is that the end of that? Do you think?
Yes. Yeah. In 2023, there's no room for it.
But are we
Um,
then going back to the word you use? And I had that written down in my notes anyway. It's sterile. How can you build positive workplaces in sterile environments?
well, you can. You can. Um, I've joked before that I put the fun into no refunds, but you've got to take fun out of the workplace nowadays. A fish and chip shop, even if it's still a family business, it needs to take a professional corporate approach because if you don't, accidents can happen, things can get missed, and we need to set the highest standards in the workplace because um, because making money and being good in business in 2023 demands it. This is you can't play at fish and chips like we used to. When I was a young man, profit and success were a byproduct from doing something that we loved doing. Nowadays, if you want to be successful in business, you have to work really hard at it. And that's not to say that generations past had it easier, but generations past
I
had
just
it
feel
easier.
like I think that I'd probably rather want to have the joke still and have a strong HR department. I'm not going to lie, because I'm the type of character that gets very bored very easily. You've known me for a long time, and I don't know, like if I can't crack a joke, I'm going to be very depressed. And I get what you're saying though. Like you are going to be treading on thin ice these days with that attitude.
You're going to get
Yeah.
hung out to dry, mate. What's going to happen is you see, we have a generation coming through now that I think really it started in America, this blame culture. And we have a generation of workers coming through that are hyper aware of, and are more, let's be honest, they're easier to offend, maybe less. I don't think they're less liberal.
I think
I think they've
many older, grouchier people would say they're already offended. They've come pre-offended. They're pre-warmed up, ready for it.
look. I've continued to grow and adapt and change my business to be to future proof it. And in 2023, I have written guidelines and policies on what is acceptable and not acceptable behaviour in the workplace. And what this article does or did for me was make me realise I'm actually on the right path. So, in my written guidelines and policies, we cannot, I will not allow talk on politics or religion in my workplace.
So going back to politics and religion, like I'm there, mate.
Yep.
That is like you're never going to see me talk about that in business anyway. Like my dad taught me early on when dealing with customers, there's two things we don't talk about in this place, and that's religion and politics. He said it early on, and he wasn't. My dad was the first one to crack jokes and probably bully someone, like as you know, like so. But those are the two things that he always said we do not talk about with customers, with staff. We're just not getting into it.
Another thing we do, people's bodies. You do not make any comment about any physical characteristic on another member of staff, whether they're tall, short, fat, thin, and nothing. There is no. I will not allow anyone to make any comment about somebody's physical, and that doesn't just have to be appearance. It could be a tattoo. It could be piercings. It could be. I will.
So let's say a staff member came in and the manager says, "Oh, I like your." I'm trying to think. I had it in my head. Guns N' Roses tattoo. I love it. Where'd you like?
No.
How would you go on? Why?
Because you are leaving yourself open to offend someone. You're opening that door. It's just
so even. But what you're saying is that even being complimentary could be a negative.
Yeah, no, there's no room. There's no room for it. To cultivate a professional working relationship with someone.
It feels very much.
And it's a stance as an employer. It's a stance I have to take because I don't want to be in the middle of. I don't want to be in the middle of.
For me, it sounds like
it
feels like we're working in the gulag, not the office space or the fish and chip shop. So you can probably see now that I've given my opinion. I'm not on the side here at all. But I think there's two extremes. I'm trying to be somewhere in the middle, and have a light touch. Yeah. What you're saying is you can't afford to have a light touch. It is a serious issue.
Well, I think it's becoming more and more serious, and like physical contact. I've got a walk-in chiller, and you could probably fit about 10 staff in there, but one at a time. If a member of staff goes in there, nobody else goes in until they come out because it's a confined space. And I think it's really, really bad that in 2023 you have to apply these rules. But if you don't do it, somebody's going to have a problem with it, and that is, you'll find throughout this podcast today, you'll find that I have a really dim view of
So
2023. I'm loving life personally. I'm having a great
when I
2023, but
was in year 11, I'll give you a little story. When I was in year 11, you may have heard this story before. My dad, in his infinite wisdom, decided to help me with work experience. And little did I know that he was actually setting me up. But I didn't know this at the time. So I said I wanted to go do sales, car sales. And we knew a guy that worked at Persia at the time. So I turn up on my Monday morning shift, ready to do car sales, go into the office, say, Nigel, I'm here. He goes, no, mate, you're a mechanic for 2 weeks. So my dad massively tricked me, because if he thought I'd like to do something else, I wouldn't end up in the fish and chip shop. So go to mechanics where it was freezing. My dad was
yeah.
smarter than I thought. Um,
He
and he still
still
is,
is.
obviously. And little did he know that he was bang on the money, that putting me in a mechanics for 2 weeks in February was going to really put me off. I wanted craving for that warmth of a chip shop. And then, so the point was that it was all banter, all hazing. Like, I mean, I got sent to the goods department for like a long wait and a sky hook and tartan paint, and I didn't get
Yeah.
offended. Like, I just thought it was hilarious. Like, and I
It,
get that I probably came from a different background because I'd worked in a business before, but no part of me thought that was upsetting. Like, one guy said to me that the third day was like, oh, can you go ask for tartan paint? I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll go. And I just chewed up 20 minutes anyway. And
yeah.
so, and I could imagine that in the 50s and 60s, it was worse. And, and I probably,
Well,
I don't know. I'm just trying to think, like, is it
your dad forgot one
gone?
thing. Mechanics have far better calendars than we
I
do
don't
in the
know.
fish
The
and chip
potato
shop.
calendars that my dad always had were interesting. And again, is that another thing? Like, because I think my brother had it in his shop where a staff member said, look, I'd rather you didn't have that calendar up. And then I think they changed it out for like a lorry one. And you think, like, how far are you willing to go, Mark?
Yeah, I think coming back to to serious talk about this, you've you need to have policies on everything, and you need to take a view of protecting yourself and protecting your business, and we've always needed to do that, but it's I think it's a great indicator of where we're at in 2023. So in 2023, when it comes to making laws, all the good ones have been made. We know, we know if you murder someone, what's going to happen to you. We know, if you speed, what's going to happen to you. All the good laws have been made, but politicians nowadays, they're just making shit up. I think, to stay relevant, to stay to say we need to be in power to do this, because I swear all of the stuff, all of the legislation that's being made nowadays, to me makes no sense.
Mm.
I feel as though um, we are just
I
we are
gen-
just we're clogging the world up with bureaucracy, red tape, compliance, and it's stopping the world from turning.
I
You
genuinely
know,
understand the
I,
need for protection at work. You're not going to hear me argue there. And I believe in every law that probably exists. However, it's then what happens. It's the grey area. The problem is what starts. So, for example, we wrote another article a few weeks ago about sexual harassment cases in McDonald's, within the company of McDonald's,
yeah,
and there is clearly a problem there. So I'm not watering it down. There is clearly a problem. But the BBC did one article with somebody, a woman, and again she was nameless, which was fine. And she said, I didn't like. She goes, I was sexually harassed at work because I heard two people talking about their nightlife and their sex life. And I thought to myself, so she was offended by a conversation that she was not party to, and they weren't too crude. They were just talking
yeah.
about things. And I thought, where do you draw the line? Yep. Your network struggled a little bit there. I've just got a sign up on my end saying your network's struggling. Can you hear me? Ah, there you go.
Sorry
You're
about
back.
that.
So, so,
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm below sea level. Sorry.
so, what's your answer to that? Like, how far are you willing to go if someone is offended because they heard someone else talking?
Yeah. Look, um, as a mate, I'd say common sense needs to take over. You know, common sense needs to
Yeah, but if
prevail.
what you're
Um,
creating though is what you're saying is, and I'm not blaming you, I'm just throwing it back at you, is that you're creating a safe space by making it sterile, which makes them even worse.
I think you're probably right, but it's me reacting to the the world, the changing world that we're now
Mm.
living in. 2023 is not 2020, and I think some of it has come out of COVID. I think some of it has come out of America. Some of it is generational. Um, you know, I just know that um, there is going to be more and more people, um, and, and and this comes from my own personal experience, not as a business owner and an operator, because I've got plenty of that, but as a consumer too. Um, I'm I've been with the same solicitor for 40 years. I just gave my solicitor a recent new instruction after concluding some other business with that same solicitor, and I got a letter saying, "Oh, we need a copy of your passport. We need to see a utility bill so that we know that you know, for money laundering purposes." And I said to him, "I've been doing business with you for 40 years. Why do you need for me to prove who I am to you after 40 years?" Okay. "Oh, it's new policy." And I'm just wondering how long it's going to be before to buy fish and chips, we need a letter from your parents, a copy of your passport, you know, proof of UK residency just to buy a portion of fish and chips. And this is the point that I'm making, that um, it, to be in business in 2023, there are more demands and more expectations on you to run at a certain level. And I think if, um, you know, I still have banter in my shop, but the policy is
Yeah,
there. So if my staff want to talk about stuff like that, and somebody gets offended and they come to me, I can say, "Well, they've been
yeah,
told. If you have an issue, you can pursue it with that person outside of work, and you can say that it happened in the workplace, but you know, this is not coming back on me. This is not coming back on my business." And I think that's the real
yeah.
point here, is that we're going to keep coming up against stuff like this. And in the other articles we're going to talk about, you'll see a common theme, and maybe it is me being an old man who's getting fed up and cynical with how difficult it is to get anything done in
Yeah.
2023. The bureaucracy and the red tape and the compliance, and um, I just, you know, I struggle to get anything done until I've proven that I'm worthy as a customer to receive the
Yeah,
service. You
and
know,
this is
I've
what
got
I believe is very authoritarian nanny state behavior, and you're trying to battle against it, but actually, in your earlier comments, you're almost saying, "I'm going to let it happen because it exists," and I'm saying, "No, I'm sort of the opposite side of that coin a little bit," and saying, "No, I'm going to fight this," and hopefully, common sense does prevail because I'm not a big proponent of the nanny state and all of this, and and I think you can sometimes overreact. And I don't think you're saying that to some degree.
oh no, if
Yeah.
anyone can overreact, it's going to be me.
Well, look, I think we've
But
done this news item to the death. But if we're going to see a pattern emerging here, like I do feel like this is like the Gulag Archipelago, like from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. It feels like we're being told what to do, how to think, walk in a certain way, talk in a certain way, and if we've got to talk in a certain way, I'm stuffed because I get people texting me saying, "I can't believe you say words like that," after I just heard that episode. So I'm going to be the first one that's going to get shot on the side of a road, you know. So
yeah, it's a tricky one, and I I don't know. I know there will be people out there listening to this that are probably looking for some kind to take something good away from this
Well,
conversation or
there's them
learn
people, and
something.
there's the other
Well,
half that are probably offended as well. So,
yeah, but look, this really is two
so
old mates just trying to fix
So
the
moving
world.
on to the next topic, next news item that we wrote about, the KFC controversy, navigating health policies and business interests. So the summary of the article is essentially KFC have been fighting back against local councillors and councils all over the country because there is a 400-metre rule about where you can open a food business. And that 400-metre rule applies to schools. So if you're 400 metres away from a school, just under, you can't open um, a restaurant, let's say, or a food restaurant, fast food restaurant. So KFC have successfully challenged over 43 councils since 2017, and it led to the the dilution of the anti-obesity policy. So go on, you go.
I loved I loved
Go
this
on.
article, and I feel really well qualified to comment on this because away from my business, I was a town councillor for 20 years on the planning committee as well. So I've been on both sides of the fence for this, and I want to start off by saying obesity is a recent phenomenon. Fish and chips is 160 years old. People have only been getting really, really fat for like the last 30 or
Why
40
did you look at
years.
me funny when
Okay.
you said the word fat?
Hey, I was looking at myself there. Obesity is caused by poor diet, too many calories in and not enough calories burnt. It's caused by big portions. It's caused by sugar, lack of exercise. It's caused by lifestyle. It doesn't matter if KFC is 400 yards, 800 yards, 10 miles from a school. It's absolute nonsense. The planning committees in the 80s, um, run by the Tories, sent everything out of town. Retail parks were the thing. It killed off the high streets. Nowhere near like COVID and the internet killed off the high streets. I mean, we've now got ghost towns. Um, but to suggest that building a KFC 400 yards from a school causes obesity is
Well,
vile. It's absolutely
so
abhorrent. I can't make any
I've
sense of
read
it.
3 scientific papers where they've tried to recreate this. One of them was in New York, and they just can't recreate it. They just can't. They said that there's just because something's there doesn't mean people are drawn to it. They're not magnets. So, you know,
Yeah.
and for me again, it goes back to this nanny state. Like, do we need the government telling us
Yeah.
everything? And this isn't the government in this instance. This is councillors. But do we need
The council is the
yeah, I guess
government as
they
well. It's
are. They're
just
just, a different, but do we need them telling us? And I've got a real big problem about, I don't, Jamie Oliver is an amazing guy. Like, I don't know him, but I think what he's done is pretty amazing. I'm never going to be in a room with him, so I can say what I really want, to be fair.
well, he's the third most financially successful published author in
Yeah.
the
So,
UK. You know, there's only J.K. Rowling and Shakespeare have made
yeah,
more
well,
money than from
I just,
books
I
than
don't
Jamie
think
Oliver.
his success is an accident. I think the guy's a genius. I really do. Like, um, but what I'd say is the sugar tax, in my opinion, and it comes from a good place. It really does. Um, and it's
Okay.
probably one thing that probably of all things should be taxed. One thing I have an issue with is what people are defining as food. Yeah. For some reason, a chocolate is classed as food. Yeah. Sweet, yeah,
Well,
but yeah, well,
really,
you eat it, yeah, but it's not food, yeah. And in my opinion, like, if they're going to tax any more food, can we make sure what is food and what is crisps and chocolate and crap? Yeah, because that's half the problem. Is what you said is what half the people eat is crap, you know. And if you're going to eat crap, like, and I mean real crap, something with zero nutritional profile, then that should be taxed, like properly taxed. Whereas where do you draw the line? Is a burger crap really? Like, if it's meat and bread, that's essentially a sandwich. Is the sandwich crap? Probably not. But a burger's crap because it's meat. You know, where what do they start going after next? You know, and I think for me, you know, because obviously fish and chips is on that list, and anybody listening to this is in the fish and chip business or fast food business, and fast food isn't bad food; it's just fast food. Yeah, and there's some fast food
Yeah.
that's bad food, but then that's not because it's fast food. That's just because it's bad food. Yeah. So where do you draw the line? Where does the nanny state stop and say, you know what, we should watch this? Like, you know, if I went to the hospital tomorrow for, I don't know, I'm just picking something. Let's say I had type 2 diabetes and they said, sorry, mate, we can't treat you because you're a fat blob and you eat too much cake. You've made a mistake here. This is NHS. Go pay for it. In my mind, the NHS should be, you know, it should be free at the point of use. And the minute you start saying certain things and changing terminology, things start to get tricky. And so, yeah, I've given this a bit of thought, to be honest. And if you're in London, yeah,
I can
well, and if
tell.
you're in London as well, 400 meters from a school, you probably can't open a food business anywhere, quite frankly. You know,
Yeah. There's a lot to unpick from what you've
sorry, mate.
just said, and I don't want to. I don't actually want to discriminate one food type from another. If it goes in your mouth, you chew it, and even if it has no nutritional value, it's
You don't chew
food,
jelly.
right?
I've seen you eat
So,
jelly.
yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a
Go
fast
on.
eater. We
I'm
won't go.
making fun. Go on.
We're digressing. The fact of the matter is, this article was about um, planning and putting sites near to schools, and it causing obesity. We can chew the cud till the milk goes sour over what is food
Yeah.
and what isn't food. But what isn't right is to suggest that putting a KFC 400 meters from a school is going to cause obesity. That is, that is whoever came up with that has probably cost the taxpayers millions of pounds to reach that conclusion, and I find that offensive. As a voter who puts people into power, I do not put people into power to waste taxpayers' money coming up with shit like this. I don't, and I find it offensive. We've got, and we said we don't talk politics in the workplace. We're
Yeah,
doing
that's
it
true.
now. Two friends, but it doesn't matter whose side you're on, who you vote for. Nobody votes in a government to come up with stuff like this. We don't want it, And I just, when I look on the news about any kind of political news story, it's always finger pointing. It's not about doing good. It's not about making smart decisions. It's about who made the wrong decision, and being accountable for those decisions. And that, to me, that's what's filling the headlines nowadays. It's about blame. It's about who should have done something and didn't, and how they're being brought to account. Who would want to be a politician these days?
I wouldn't.
Because the people that are doing it, I mean, it's a crap job. Um, I am woefully disillusioned um, with the with the state of politics, bureaucracy. But this story is a nonsense, but it's a great story because it gets you
Yeah.
thinking, it
I
gets you
think I've
talking.
seen two different sides of the story in the media, and obviously one is well done to KFC, which is I guess
Yeah,
politically,
I
yeah, which
applaud
I
them.
guess politically would be a hard right opinion, and then on the left, and I'm doing quotations here, it's how bad KFC are. Um, but this policy would also affect a small cafe, a small bakery. It would affect that too. And I know you've had a small deli, and I know that if someone said that we're going to squash your entrepreneurial spirit because there's a school 400 meters away, why don't the schools just say
Yeah,
kids aren't allowed out? There we go, happy days, dealt with. Like,
yeah.
and then the schools could actually use their funds to feed the kids. I think that's a lot better. I really do. You know,
Yeah. Look, when I was on the planning committee for my own town council, I allowed another chip shop to open 150 yards from my chip shop, because I had to declare an interest and leave the room, and make sure that all the decisions and the politics and everything was done fairly and transparently. The policies that shape the high street, that all the planning decisions, they there's no consistency. That I see things, because I develop how I build housing estates now. I see the interpretation and the application of planning policy is so different in every single street. There's no street scene anymore. You see 3-story houses next to 2-story houses, next to UPVC windows, next to sash timber windows, and there is no consistency. Different types of brickwork, different types of render, all in the same street.
No, I just think this is what happens when you let busybodies have high vis and a clipboard. They start walking around and telling people what they can do. I remember someone said to me once, they were having a big job done on site, and they said, "Oh, here comes the business prevention officer." And that's the way they see council and councillors. They genuinely see them as people that they almost don't want to see the civil society grow and flourish. They want to stamp it down. And
we've become grumpy.
Yeah, maybe this is true. Maybe this segment of the podcast shouldn't be called Reading the Papers. It should be called Two Old Men Have a Moan. But
it was a great article, and I have to applaud you for putting it out, and I have to applaud KFC for standing up to it.
I do like a good KFC every now and then. I won't lie. I'm not defending them because I like the chicken. I'm just,
I call it unlucky fried kitten.
It is hit and miss. It is hit and miss. So yeah, but no. I thought it was one of those articles that probably wouldn't get a lot of traction, oddly, and yet I checked our analytics today, and quite a lot of people have clicked on it. Whether they've read it all, I don't know. They probably got sick of our writing and thought, Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was brilliant. But having said that, like I said, I've been on both sides of the fence. To me, it's a nonsense. To suggest that we know what causes obesity. Everybody knows what causes obesity. It's called being lazy.
My
and
belt
greedy.
knows what causes obesity. And look, I know there's a small amount of people that would.
I used to sell my packed lunch as a kid and go and spend it at the chippy, not my own chippy.
Yeah, well, you see, this is how crazy you are. See, a lot of people used to say that the difference between me and you was our size, and now I think we're just before and way before. That's it. We're both just But I don't know. I do think I've got a gym membership now. And my nephew makes fun of me and says that I spent more time signing up at the gym than I did actually going to the gym. So yeah, thing is, you've just got to get into that zone, no one. I don't eat crap that much. You won't see me at these places that much, and I think so because it's there just does not mean it's going to be abused. So yeah,
my favourite machine at the gym was the vending machine.
But it was. All right, next topic. So you chose this one. Scottish pubs are shutting down twice as fast as they are in England. Summary is the pub and bar industry in Scotland is in a significant crisis, much higher rate of closures compared to England. The Scottish Beer and Pub Association and Scottish Licensed Trade Association report that 76 pubs closed between Q1 and Q3 this year. Sharp increase from last year. What's your thoughts on pubs closing, Mark? I know you've owned pubs, so.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I own 3 pubs, so I do feel quite qualified to talk about this. Right. First of all, before I say what I'm going to say, I want to say I love the Scottish. Okay, I was up in Scotland for the Scottish Fish and Chip Awards just the other week. I have friends from Scotland. I love the Scottish. So anything I'm about to say is in no way meant to offend the Scottish. Okay.
But
this article doesn't publish all of the facts. What I believe in my heart is happening here is that Scotland is actually catching up to what has already happened in England. So the fact that they're closing twice as fast in England is because the ones in England have already closed, probably 2-3 years ago during COVID. And I think the reason for that is the Scottish drinking culture is a little bit more resilient, and the pubs have lasted longer because the Scottish like a good drink. And I saw evidence of that. Anyone that went to the Scottish Fish and Chip Awards, they do things different up there when it comes to drink. They don't end the evening with a drink. They start the evening with a drink,
Okay.
and then they drink, and then they drink a bit more, and then they have something to eat, and then they drink, and it's brilliant. It is absolutely fantastic. Like I said, I don't mean it in a derogatory manner towards the Scottish at all. They're just it's more ingrained into their culture. Maybe it's because they make more whiskey up there. I really don't know. Maybe it's because it's colder and they need to stay warmer. But the Scottish pub scene is now starting to struggle. But it's not just about the alcohol. It's about lifestyle changes. I mentioned COVID, the smoking ban when that came in 2008, the cost of living. I mean, you buy a pint in a pub and then you go to a supermarket and you can get 4 cans, 8 cans for the same price that you buy, a pint for. And then you look at other lifestyle changes, home entertainment, the internet, the amount of TV stations there are now, the amount of streaming channels there are. Staying in is the new going out. So there's lots of reasons why pubs are starting to close. And it's one of those articles that really it stimulates the grey matter. It does get you thinking. But I think what's really going on, if you read between the lines of this article, is that Scotland is now starting to experience what has already happened south of the border. What are your thoughts?
Is Starbucks and Costa Coffee the new pub?
No, it's the new bank. Because they're where banks used to be. Do you remember when you wanted to borrow money? You go see your bank manager and he'd make you a cup of tea and you'd sit and tell him, and then he had the discretion to lend there and then. Nowadays, you apply online to your bank manager, and then it goes up the line to a lending team who don't know you, don't know your business. They don't care. They have a look and they say, "Well, we're not really lending in your sector."
Yeah,
Fuck off.
I think.
But can I
Go
just
on.
quickly finish? Coffee shops are now where banks used to be. I think in 10 years' time, you'll be able to go into Starbucks and get a Starbucks loan. You'll be able to go in and get a coffee, and Starbucks and Costa will start lending money to their and then the banks are going to say, why did we pull out of the high street? Why did we give? Because banks really now don't treat their customers like customers. Whenever I go into a bank, I don't feel like I get service. I don't feel as though I'm treated like a customer. I get charged to pay in. I get charged to take out. I have to do a 60-mile round trip for pound coins these days because all of the 3 nearest branches to me are closed. So again, we're seeing a change in
I think
the
why
high
I
street.
say that is that there has been a shift in how we are. I think the British have become a bit more European. We like coffee. We like ice cream in the winter. Things have shifted a little bit. Is it Gen Z today? The generation today, they have less sex. They go out less. They
have less sex than us.
Yeah, believe it or not, yeah, they they definitely smoke less, and they also drink less, and they're also more averse to drugs. Yeah, and I know we hear about it a lot more, but the truth is, all of that consumption is down. So, when you were 18, things would have been very different. You wanted to get your driver's license, you wanted to get out there, you wanted to date girls and just do things. I was the same when I was 18. I wanted a driver's license. I wanted to get out of the prison of not having a car. Yeah.
There's no way an 18-year-old today is having less sex.
The statistics show that.
And doing more drugs than I was.
The statistics, I can't even speak now. The statistics show that kids today, and I don't want to be derogatory when I say kids, younger people today, the people that we were when we were young, they're having less sex and they're going out less. And they're just, they've become Netflix people, and And they're
Yeah,
gamers, and they like
yeah,
their games. They like their games, and they're less social, and so they don't go to the pub. They're not going to meet their mates for a pint as much. I'm not casting everybody with the same brush, and I'm also talking about extremes. But the point stands that um, people are probably more health conscious now, and this is a paradox to our last topic. Actually, I've got three
yeah,
nephews that go to the gym 6 times a week, and they never got it off me. I can guarantee you, and they never got it off their parents because they don't go to the gym. So something's shifted
yeah.
in some segments of society where pubs just aren't that great anymore. I remember going into a pub across the road from my cousin's fish and chip shop in El Shilton. It was a proper working men's sort of club. You walk in, you've got the stink of soggy carpet, vending machines, cigarettes, tobacco, spilt beer. I don't think my son Alex, I think if I put him in a room like that today, I think his body would break down. It'd be a sensory attack,
So,
you know. You
yeah, I
know.
mean, this generation have been through a pandemic,
Mm,
they've, and there has been a massive shift. The reason they go to the gym is because they've never had jumpers for goalposts.
remember that?
They've never jumped on a BMX and built a ramp with bricks and a bit of, you know, they we've raised them
Yeah.
differently. And you can't blame the
No, no, I'm
children.
not
You
blaming
have to look at
kids.
the
No, no, I'm,
generation
I'm, I'm
before.
sort of just,
Yeah,
I'm giving a vision of what society is to some degree. I'm definitely not blaming them.
yeah,
Like,
no, yeah, it's massively changed, and I guess at the start of this, I talked about future proofing. We need to be aware, rather than blame.
Mm.
We need to be aware of what's going on, and I think this pub article in particular was good in that it had statistics to back it up, but I think you've got to read between the lines
I'll
on this
also,
one.
one thing I want to throw in, there's not been a lot of money in pubs since probably 2007, 2008. I think,
Breaking Bad, Credit
yeah,
Crunch.
I think,
Bad.
and I think if anything, post pandemic has made it probably harder for pubs financially. And also, it's
Yeah,
always been a thing, hasn't it? How breweries have always had the strong arm over the leasees. Uh,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
always been, that's not a new
Um,
story. I haven't just revealed something here.
no,
Yeah,
breweries really, they're
yeah,
landlords. If you're successful in a pub, they put the price of
yeah,
the beer up. You know, to be successful as a tenant in a pub these days, you've got to have a good
yeah.
food offer without a doubt. Because if your wet sales are strong, the brewery will punish you by putting your rent up or putting your
Mm.
beer up. Um, and if you default, they'll kick you out and they'll get another tenant. There's always
Well, there was
somebody with a
there
pocket
was
full.
always somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was always somebody with a pocket full of money and a dream that would come along and take on a pub and then flush their savings the same way.
so
Um, I've
we've
seen it
written two
myself.
other articles recently, and it says, well, they are about Marston's focusing on growth in pubs in different locations. I think that's really important. Um, like
Yeah,
for like sales are up 10% at Marston's. Mitchell and Butler 9% up like for like from last year. And they've been closing pubs, but they've also been opening new pubs in completely different locations. So I do think, are we
yeah,
seeing a clearing here of pubs in, let's say, really dinky villages and out of the way places and near the old coal mines, and the coal mines haven't been there for 30 years anyway, and the pub just hung on by a thread. Are we
yeah.
seeing a lot of regeneration in new areas?
Yes.
Weatherspoons as well. Another one, opening pubs in lots of new areas, and I'm sure they're quietly closing pubs that are just in crap areas. So
Well, I sold my freeholds because all of my pubs I own the buildings as well. I sold two of my freeholds to Marsden's, and I sold my third one, which was a cinema, to Weatherspoons. So again, I am very well qualified to talk about this. Um, I sold my freeholds to Marsden's for about 3 million, and when I exited those pubs, I then bought the leases back from them, and I went in as a tenant. And within a year, I'd given them the keys back. So what Marston's did was they then built a brand new pub, opened a new site near to the two that they bought off me, because they wanted to strong arm their way into the Fens, and it's still there today. It's a new pub called Cobblestones. It does very well, but Marston's had this policy. This was in about 2010, where they were looking to come out of some of their sites and go into new areas and marry their wet sales to strong food offers. So, I was a good scalp for them at the time. They couldn't give me enough of their money.
So, Mark, we've done that. We've done that one to death, mate. So, moving on. Australian seafood. The article about Australian seafood gets a transparency boost with mandatory origin labelling. Basically, the crux of it is, if you're a restaurant or a chip shop, let's say, and you're selling any seafood, you've now, in Australia that is, you've now got to put A on the label for, or on the menu for Australian, I for imported, M for mixed origin. Mixed origin sounds odd, doesn't it? But yeah, what's your thoughts on that? You've spent a bit of time in Australia. What's your thoughts on that?
So, first of all, I think it's amazing that 200 years ago, anyone that we didn't like, we shipped off to Australia. All our junk, we got rid of them. We just sent them over there with a criminal record, and now they're teaching the world how we need to do things. I think it's amazing. Australia, for me, I don't know if you watch rubbish TV like Border Patrol or anything like that, but whenever I have half an hour to kill, I watch rubbish TV, and the Australians are really picky about what they let into their country. Their laws and that are they're really strict, and so when I read this article, I read it with interest, because Australians are bang on protecting Australia. They're bang on with being patriotic. They're really good about being eco-friendly. And so what they're doing, really, I think does set a standard for the rest of the world to follow. They are blazing a trail. So I was interested to read the article. I like the way that the labelling actually helps consumers, and it actually helps retailers with perceived quality. So when you look at where something's coming from now, if you are a patriot, or you want to keep food miles low and you want to buy Australian, or you actually really do care about what you're putting in your body, and I think the labelling rules there are really good for that. So I don't really have an issue with the idea of doing it. I think the reasons behind it they're a little bit conflicted. From a consumer point of view, I think it's great. I think the end user being able to choose, pick, all of those things, adding quality is fine. But then the old cynic in me goes back to this same 2023 issue that I've got. Why are they doing it? Like I said before, just like 20 minutes ago, all the good laws have already been made. So you got some bureaucrats somewhere saying, let's validate our reason for existing. Let's take something that's perfectly good, perfectly acceptable, and let's complicate it. Let's make it even more tricky. Let's make it. So there's a part of me that's saying, it's do we need it? Probably not. Is it a good thing? Yes, okay. Why are they doing it? That's the cynic in me. So that's just how I view this article. It's interesting to read. I can understand why, but there's a part of me that says, do we need it? Do we? What do you think?
I think in the UK, what if you basically say something's breaded fish or battered fish or sautéed fish, then it can be any fish. But if you was to say it's battered, breaded, or grilled or fried cod, then it has to be cod. I'm trying to figure out which is better. I sort of like the idea of saying it is. I actually don't care whether it's Australian or mixed origin or whatever. I think I just like the idea of everyone saying where everything's from. I don't see the negative. Icelandic cod, Norwegian haddock, British cod, Scottish cod, Australian. Trying to think of some of their fish. They've got loads, didn't they? Barramundi. I just think I don't really see the issue. I don't know. I just think where does it end again? But also, I don't see the negative. I think it's a good thing. I think customers want to know these things. And remember, Australia's in a different place. Australia is near China, and I would imagine they're getting a lot of mixed origin um, fish that's probably processed to some degree. So I'd imagine that some clarity wouldn't go amiss there. Um,
Yeah,
is
I
a
think
thought.
like I said, I think at the end of the supply chain, it can only be good for consumers, and it can only be good for good retailers. It makes it harder for those less reputable to sneak stuff into the food chain, and it does. It gives confidence, peace of
You,
mind,
you
perceived
spent some time
quality.
in you spent some time in Australia. You know these guys take their seafood really seriously.
Yeah, I mean there are more fish and chip shops in Australia than there are in the UK, but the marriage of fish and chips over there is very different. It's all about the fish. It's virtually all a frozen chip product, and it's there on the plate to make sure you're full after you've had
Okay,
what you really went for, fish.
oh, I see. Whereas over here, obviously, it is truly fish and chips.
Yeah, yeah, it's an equal marriage. Over there, the chips are just subservient. Pretty much like men are these days to their wives.
But they do seem to like a wider variety of fish, unlike the Brits who tend to stick to battered cod and haddock. You know, and if you have haddock down south, you're classed as posh, and if you have cod up north, you're classed as posh. I think that's as adventurous as some people get. Really, we've got the main
Yeah,
five fish
I,
in
I
the
think
UK.
Australians are more adventurous. I mean, they have to shake their shoes off before they put their feet in them. They have to look under their pillow before they put their head down at night. You know, they Australians will pretty much eat anything. If it moves, they kill it before it kills them, and then they eat it. And when
Okay,
it comes
fair
to
enough.
fish, there's a more diverse menu. Um, and there's some amazing things to eat over there if you can catch it and kill it before it kills you. Whereas in the UK, unless it's white and it's bland, we tend not to put it in our mouths. It is a different market, but their legislative approach to how they're going about their labelling, I think it sets a standard, and it's something that we can all learn from. It was interesting to read about it anyway.
Do you think that the British naming standards or trading standards, let's say, are they a bit weak? Are they sufficiently enough, or are they weak? Do we need to bolster them?
Um, well, look, I've had trading standards tell me how much fish I can put in a fish cake, to tell me whether I have to name my species and whether I can just call it fish and chips. And to be honest, um, I'm not a fan of bureaucracy and red tape. I'd like to be able to just get on and do what I do, but I appreciate and recognise that legislation protects the good operators from the bad ones. So I can't be against it. I'm just, I don't know. Like I said, I'm a bit more cynical, and I think that I think just making up laws for the sake of making up laws is starting to really grind on me a little bit. But I can see the sense in this, and I think the
Well, I guess
UK, we can learn. We can always learn. You can always be better. But then there comes a tipping point where I think that's nonsense. But I don't think we're there yet.
I think it's fair to say that the legislation is there to protect consumers first, and if a consumer
Yeah.
pays 6-7 quid for cod and chips, and they end up getting panga and chips, they're probably, or bassa or whatever it's called, riverfish, Vietnamese catfish. They're not going to be, they're not going to be spewing. They're not going to be ill. They're not going to be sick. But they didn't get what they asked for, or at least what they paid for. And I think this is probably what separates that. And also, I think from a pride point of view, I actually like the fact that, for example, Ceres uses British wheat, 25-mile radius from the M25. So draw another circle around the M25. I like that. I like promoting that that's what we do. So there's a sense of pride from using British where possible. Yeah, and I don't
Yeah,
think that has to be legislation to tell people, but I do think it should be legislation that you make sure you give them that when you tell them that, if that makes sense.
yeah. That makes perfect sense to me. I think if you're doing something good, not just for your consumers, but for the planet as well, and for the ethics of your business, you should be allowed to promote it, and you should be able to use the law to call out those that aren't. Um, Look, at the time of us recording this podcast right now, there'll be a lot of chip shops in the UK selling magic haddock as cod, because at the moment haddock is cheap.
Yeah, Magic haddock.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of people doing that. Very, very, very occasionally, haddock comes in cheaper than cod, and at the moment,
Yeah.
haddock is probably the cheapest it's been for a long, long time. And people listening to this podcast, they'll know that they'll know whether they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And I have fish suppliers offering me haddock at the moment, not to sell as cod, because a fish supplier would never do that. So let me make that clear. But there'll be chip shops out there that will take advantage of that, and I think that's where labelling laws should be tighter. I'd rather than see the laws change, I'd like to see enforcement increase. To be honest,
Mm.
that's my own
I
view,
just, I just,
because
I, Go on, mate.
I was just saying, the good operators would probably like to see more people actually out there paying for a sample and having it tested, and say, actually, you're not selling what you say you're selling. Um, but
Mm.
yeah, there's people who probably wouldn't want me to say that, but they're on the wrong side of the law.
Yeah. And look, the fact is, consumers are eating it. They must enjoy it. So if you go back a step
Yeah,
further, why not just tell them it's haddock? Just why not just tell them? Like, because a
yeah,
lot of people say, "Oh, you can't sell haddock here and you can't sell cod there," but then you probably can. I genuinely think you probably could if you are doing it in a way like you just said by saying magic haddock or magic cod. If you're doing it in that way, then you can do it the legit way too. I just think it just means a bit of communicating to customers. Supermarkets sell loads of catfish, bassa, panga. It's surprising how much they sell. So customers are probably happy buying it, you know. So yeah, I guess it is all just down to communicating, isn't it? One thing that I do find is that a lot of other countries have a sense of pride in what they sell. So, for example, Himalayan sea salt, you've got Alaskan pollock, which is probably not a great product, but it is, it's something they're proud of. And yet Australia can do this, but I think if Britain was to do this, the UK, I think people would see that as protectionist and they'd want to moan about it. Because the British, and I'm one of them, we like to bash ourselves,
yeah. Well,
That
I mean, Australia is very different, and it's a different market, and that I think that's why you putting this article out there is it's good, because it creates debate, and it opens up talk about the potential where we can go with things, and I think Australia's got it right on this.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting fact. I didn't realise that 62% of their seafood is imported. Um, I wonder what that figure is for British. It's got to be quite high for seafood in the UK, surely.
Well, when you consider how much of our market is fish and chips, and compared to other seafood sold, um,
Mm.
yeah, it's got a huge chunk imported, hasn't it? Um,
Yeah,
the British fishing industry is really day boats dotted around the coastline, and then we have these huge vessels bringing containers of frozen at sea cod and haddock, um, and other fish into the country that we consume in vast amounts. So
yeah.
yeah, I would. It'd be interesting to find somebody must know that. Des
Well,
would know that,
what
wouldn't he? Des.
Des would know that. Yeah, I need to get Des on. And one thing I really want to ask, and no one's managed to give me the answer yet, is when I think it was probably the 70s and 80s when they first started FAS vessels, frozen at sea vessels. Why is it that that sort of went to the Norwegians and the Faroese and the Russians and the Icelandics and not the British. Why did the British say, nah, we're not doing that? We don't want these huge vessels that are going to go out and mop up loads of cod and haddock and freeze it out at sea. No one's managed to give me the answer. It's got nothing, from what I can understand, it's got nothing to do with European funding. It's just we never wanted to do it. We, as a
I
nation,
think
go on, sorry.
I think I know what.
Go
When
on.
you look at how much fishing plays a part in the national revenue of places like Norway and Iceland, it's a big part of what they do. There's always going to be a willingness to invest, to grow. And in the UK, the British fishing industry represents such a small part. Although
2% or something?
we're a coastal nation, we are we're a manufacturing nation, then we're a technology nation, but our nation's economy now is built on the service industry. It's built on housing. If when the housing market collapses in the UK, everything goes wrong. That I think that's why. I think that's why it's always been propped up.
Mm,
Um, but fishing doesn't play a big part of the gross national income. Tourism's probably bigger than fishing in the
yeah,
UK, but when you look at Norway, it's like 90%. I think it's a huge figure goes on fishing,
yeah.
and I think that when we got into bed with Europe, we basically we basically handed over a lot of our fishing rights to Europe, and along
Mm,
with it the the desire to invest in it. We've got the same
yeah.
day boats going out now. Now that we've got our fishing rights back, we've got an industry that's been held in the past, and I'm sure other people will have their own opinions on it, but that's what I've taken from
Mm.
from my
Well, on that note, Mark, very grateful for your time, and
end on a
we've put
hey, eh?
no, we've ended on a really high note, and we've had some performance issues, network performance issues, nothing else I should add, and yeah, it's been absolutely great, and thanks for your time, mate.
It was a pleasure. I always enjoy chatting to you, and I don't mind anyone listening in on it. Um, some will agree, some won't, but hey, we put it out there, didn't we? Forever.
Exactly, that's what it's about. I'm sure people will let us know if they disagree. I enjoyed chatting to Mark about these topics. What did you think of the topics that were covered? I'd love to know your thoughts. If you want to keep in the loop of what we're doing at Ceres, then you should be following us on social media. But to get the information and offers delivered to your inbox, then you need to be on our mailing list. The link will be in the episode show notes. And like we said before, if you know somebody that's really doing something interesting in hospitality, let us know who they are. We'd love to have them on the podcast. Email us at any time at stelios@worldofceres.com. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and on social media. If you like this episode, then chances are they will too.